Let's start. Thank you for coming. My name is Ivan. I'm a product owner manager at the company Akiva Labs. We're developing software at Salesforce platform, and my path to IT started about 10 years ago, being an engineer of tech support of the international department of one of the largest IT companies. And at that moment in time, my company had certain standards of communication for tech support. There were a number of principles why those standards were introduced to make sure that the communication is as efficient as possible. It's short, not time consuming, and it's equally comfortable both for the client and the employee. And owing to those standards, even though technically we might fail in solving a client's problems, we still received we still received likes and many stars. Then I went to the development department. I worked as a product owner and started to use the same standards of communication in my daily life when collecting requirements, when communicating with a client about different defects. I found this feedback mechanism very efficient. I also shared this information with my colleagues who, one way or another, communicate with clients in English. And in principle, now I would like to share with you, if you somehow communicate with clients in English, I think you will find my presentation useful. Why is it important? Let's take my friend Ben, the American, who helped me validate what I'm going to tell you about. Whenever he goes to travel to some exotic country, he wants to maintain the accustomed level of comfort. That's why he selects such hotel chains as Holiday Inn, Marriott, or something like that, because he knows what he can expect from such hotel, like a bed, which is properly made, this pillows, long pillows, and he knows that it's all made in Scandinavian style with a flat screen TV, independent whether it is a different country or not. If he goes to a restaurant somewhere, he selects McDonald's because he knows what to expect from the quality of food there, like French fries and hamburger. The same would be true about the expected service provided by IT company to foreign customers. A client also expects that the level of service would be at the level that they're used to, and they wouldn't feel that they're communicating with the third-party outsource, but that they called a neighbor or something, that the contractor is really close by. That's a funny slide. In one of the stand-ups, an American stand-upper shared his life hack, what to do if you're approached in a dark alley by two guys and asked whether you know what neighborhood you're in. And he can answer by imitating Russian accent. Is this a bad neighborhood? And that was the end of story. It worked very well. So why would Russian language or even English language pronounced with a Russian accent sound so rough? Maybe is it because we put the words in the wrong order, nonverbal language. In my presentation, I'm going to tell you about this as well. Different people are different. They develop differently because of certain geographical positioning, climate, religion, and so on. People built their own picture of the world, which one way or another was reflected in their language. For instance, if we take the word pineapple, in the Russian language, this is a borrowed word. When we see somebody else called it ananas, so we call it ananas. In English, it's pineapple. Pine sounds like a tree. An apple is an apple. So it's a very strange hybrid combination. Makes no sense. If we take some idioms, then somebody can be motivated by a carrot and a stick. Or if we tell a person to get lost, you send such a person in the middle of nowhere. Also, you can follow the same non-verbal picture of the world, the well-known Italian parquet, or the if we look at the smiling attitudes, you can right away guess which one of these astronauts comes from Russia. There are a number of theories about this. I like the theory according to which the smile in the European world is the safety sign. When we are walking along the dark alley, you see a guy, you smile at him if you're in Europe, meaning that you're safe, and they will smile back, meaning that I'm not going to fight you or anything. We'll smile at each other and walk past each other. But try to imagine the same situation played out in Russia. If you're walking in the dark alley, you see some kind of shadowy guy. We you put your eyes down, you walk past him as quickly as possible. That's how we do things. So it's total ignore, poker face. I'm ignoring you, meaning that I'm no threat to you. Trying to imagine a mixed situation when you're walking towards a guy who is smiling at you and you're trying to ignore him. He's smiling at me because he wants to sell me something, or what is going on there? Is he crazy? The same way, the same smile penetrated the language. And now we approach the first pattern of communication, which is greeting. This is the question, how are you? We were told in schools to say, how are you? I'm fine, thank you, and how are you? Grammatically, it's correct, but you have to be careful in how you answer this question, how are you? For instance, if my wife is insulted with me, I'm asking her, how are you? She says, everything's fine. Darling, are you okay? I'm fine. What's wrong? I said, I'm fine. See, you have to be very careful in noticing the intonation, how you're saying the same word. I'm fine. The question is, do we need to answer this, how are you, or not? We have two examples. The first example, hi, Ivan, how are you? I wanted to check you to see if you had a chance to look at the suggestions here. The person wants to find out whether I've looked at some of the changes he shared with me. Here we see the how are you phrase, but you don't need to answer this because it's asked like the beginning of the conversation, like the movie interpreters or translators when you hear, hey Jack, how are you? And they translate it simply hi Jack without how are you. You don't need to answer it. But sometimes how are you makes sense. Hey Ivan, how are you? It would be great to catch up. So a person hasn't seen me for a while. He wants to get together. And he's asked me how I am. That's why it's in the center of the conversation. So it makes sense to answer this question to find out how you're going. Also, sometimes there is a question whether we communicate on the first name basis or not. In the Russian language, we have different use here, meaning showing respect or disrespect. In the English language, you used to have this distribution and the you or levels. Excuse me, sir, would you be so kind as to help me, please? In this case, of course, we see that there is a high level of respect reflected in this sentence. So we can translate it, I'm sorry, sir, could you help me, please? In the second case, hey, you come here and help me. I'm sure there is very little respect here. We have to use the lower level of respect in the Russian language when translating it. Then greeting levels, the most formal is to say good morning, good afternoon. It's applicable to the person who you are on friendly basis with or you haven't seen before. Hello everyone, or to address a person by first name. Next, you can thank people who introduced you. Thank you for the introduction. Looking forward to working with you. It's great connecting with you. How do you do? Thanks for the introduction. And also you can thank the client for giving you some time for this meeting. Thank you for the email. Thanks for getting in touch. Thank you for finding time to meet with us. I know that you're very busy. Second pattern of communication is the commitment to assistance. Sometimes there are situations, even when you pay for a service, sometimes you uncomfortable asking again. It's much better when a waiter approaches you saying that I'm going to be your waiter today. I can do anything you want for you today. So here we're just telling them, you're our dear client. We can do everything you want. We are happy to help. No problem. What is it? Sure. How can I help? These are the phrases that we can use. Next pattern of communication is paraphrasing. How often did you encounter a situation when you didn't catch a word or misunderstood something and try to understand that you're communicating with your client in English, and it's not your first language, and for them it's not their first language, and there's a bad connection, and the client has a heavy accent and some background noise, and it's very easy not to catch what he's saying. In the one picture, you can see the shares are going to sell, then sell, say goodbye. Okay, bye, 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 bye. So see, you can sometimes get a Chinese whispers situation here, especially when you are just beginning this relation and communication. You need to win the trust of this client. If they don't know the level of your English, it is important for them to understand that you understood this person. That's why you have to return back the same words that he told you. Like, if I understood correctly, as far as I understand, if I got it right, this way you have the ping pong situation between you and the client would be confident that you have understood what he was trying to deliver. Sometimes we have to interrupt the client. It's quite okay. We can use such thing as sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I don't quite understand. Or, for instance, if somebody is talking, you interrupt the phrase, if I may, and add something you wanted to say. Actually, it's very important to tell the difference between excuse me and sorry. Excuse me is said before you do something, and sorry after you committed a mistake. When you move throughout people, you say excuse me, then you really push somebody, you turn around, say sorry. And in paraphrasing, you shouldn't use the Russian what, because it sounds like are you crazy or something. So it's better to say sorry, I didn't understand that, I didn't get that, I didn't quite catch that, can you say it in another way, or at least sorry. So don't be shy to ask the client to repeat what they wanted to say. Sometimes there are cases when a client has very heavy accent and a bad connection. You ask him a number of times, still didn't understand what he was trying to say. There's a life hack to repeat the same thing but in letter, in the mail. Okay, moving on to the requirement gathering. How to build a sentence out of the words. We ask the client, for instance, to send in his requirements. We will ask him, can you give me please the requirements. That's how it sounds in Russian. In the English language, as like my American friend saying, who lived in Russia for a long time, I cannot use this. You use imperative, a lot of imperatives in your sentences. He says, only mother can say this, go and wash your hands, brush your teeth and go to bed. But in the English language, it would be better to say by using a question, can you share the requirements with me, please? Or can you please share the requirements with me? In this case, it would sound much better if we take the phrase like, how do you say, have you sent the requirements to me? Did you send me the requirements? And that's again like mother to son conversation. Did you do your homework? Like, you're under control here. That's why we're trying to use present perfect. Have you had a chance to send me the requirements? And this sentence construct, have you had a chance, very well with present perfect. Whenever collecting requirements, you might need to ask some additional questions or ask the client to share the log or do some additional steps. May I ask you to do something? Would you please let me know if allow me to do something? I'll plan on doing something if that works for you is also a very good phrase if that works for you when you're already going to do that anyway, but you're just asking the client's permission. If the client does not object, you're warning them. Follow up when you're asking additional questions or giving him additional reminders. We even use this word now in the Russian language. So follow up on something, right? I would like to follow up on you with you on, say, email that I sent you previously. Or, for instance, we're asking the client to do something. Would you mind doing something? Again, it causes certain problems in the Russian speaker. Would you mind opening the window? You always say yes. Yes means I do mind against opening the window. So here you have to answer it no and go ahead and open the window. Next part is setting time expectations. When you tell the client that when different types of actions are going to be performed by you, if the client does not request it, because you're very lucky with the client, because sooner or later he's going to ask you this, so you should give him it in advance before asking. You can, I'll analyze the issue, get back to you tomorrow. I understand, I'll check it, and we'll contact you early next week. So the more vague it is with the date, the better, and the worse it is to the client. That's why try to do it as vague as possible. In the English language, you can use, you should be able to know the most the famous abbreviations like ASAP, as soon as possible, ETA, estimated time of arrival, or by what time we can perform different features. For instance, we receive a defect and you're asked, when are you going to fix it? Give us ETA. For instance, we have received ETA and received a defect or bug, and we are asked for ETA. So we can give them ETA for ETA. Level of effort. How many man hours, man days, sprints, or something else it might take to develop a feature. Recently, we had a precedent when we sent to the client level of effort in man hours. We're saying man hours sounds sexist. Let's turn it into person hours. Okay, we said no problem. Also, AM, PM is important to know which one is which and know the main time zones. I work with Central European time zone, Eastern New York, Mountain Standard Time, Pacific is Las Vegas. Keeping customer in the loop. In other words, it is important for the client to understand why the bug or defect happened and why the development will take so long. I'm paying you good money and you cannot add additional field here. What's going on? In the same manner, if the client doesn't ask this, his boss will ask the same question, why it's taking so long. So he must have some kind of explanation or argument, even if he doesn't have enough technical background. At least he can relay it to the boss. So it's important to explain to the client why different errors took place and why it takes so long to fix them. The issue is that the thing is that the complexity of this task is in.
When we provide a solution to the client, we need to be sure in what we develop, and we should avoid such words as problem. We have issue, not a problem. If you say I don't know, it's not professional. So you should say I need to clarify, double check this with the team. When we show demo, we don't say hope it works or fingers crossed. Never. Or if something happens, you shouldn't comment, oh, it's so long, it's loading like hell. It reduces the level of trust to your software. Like Miles Davis said, when I made a mistake at the concert, I then make it again deliberately to show that it was not a mistake. Confirmation and additional information in Jira You might have a standardized process of accepting tasks from clients, but we analysts need a kind of oral confirmation from the client if we resolved his problem. Have I answered your question? So, for example, if they answered not exactly, but something, answered something at least, yeah? And you need to make sure that this was the answer for the question. Or have I solved your issue? And then we suggest something additional to the client. Winnie the Pooh didn't want to leave because the rabbit was offering something else to eat. If the client wants too much and it is not mentioned in the contract, we can say, of course, dear client, but please negotiate with our sales department. Of course, it is in our interest to solve a number of problems in one communication. Is there anything else I can help you? Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you need some additional help. And even if a client doesn't need anything, we might think for the future that the client had problem with installation. And then it will be some operation with the product, some launch in the main flow. So I will send him the link for documentation to read about possible problems, and maybe the client will not come back to us. At the end, we say thank you, bye bye, have a good meeting, nice talking to you, etc. Weekend it's not it's singular. Please pay attention to that. Sometimes clients say compliments and you ignore it, but whatever the client says, you need to react somehow. If the client tells you how he or she spent her weekend, you need to respond somehow. In return to thanks, we say the pleasure is all mine, no problem, no worries, you are very welcome. Summing up, we start talking to the client. This is the greeting. We respond to his how are you, like I'm doing good, I'm fine, not bad, how about you, or not responding if it is not assumed by the context. Then commitment to assistance, saying that we'll be ready to help, paraphrasing, returning the phrase uh, in a different form, requiring requirement gathering. We interrupt the client if necessary and collect requirements. We're setting time expectation, we're keeping customer in the loop, explaining him why it will take so much time. Solution and confidence building. We avoid here the words like problem or we are the greatest. Additional assistance offering confirmation. We confirm that we have resolved the problem and provide some additional useful links and say thank you to the client. That's all from my side. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Questions? Hello. Thank you for the presentation. It was very relaxing at the end of the conference. My experience of talking to the English speaking clients shows that B2 level is enough because all the IT terms and releases, requirement terms, you just learn them and that's it. But very often people want C1 level, and C1 means knowing idioms that speakers use. Did you have any experience like that? Or requirements like that? Using idioms or phraseology? Or everything is fine? Well, thank you for your question. When I hire analysts, I prefer those with a better level of language. So the employee should be able to provide a joke, etc., and have better knowledge of English. Not like a robot answering with the fixed phrases. You become a partner of the client. You can have a beer with the client and talk to him. And if you know some cultural norms and phraseology, if you watch some movies or TV shows, and you can use quotes from these movies or memes, it's very good. And if something is not going so well in your project, this communication might help a lot. Are there any phrases that sound good for us, but client perceives these phrases as aggressive? There are a lot of such phrases in Russian that are not acceptable in business communication. Well, of course, they exist. I cannot tell you out of the scratch now. But as I mentioned in my presentation, it's important not to talk in imperative. You uh, ask it as a question if we ask something from the client. This is the first example. And you need to be very careful, especially with these new ethics, the gender, religious issues. You should be politically correct and try avoiding to understand the limits of the tabooed words. Hello? You told us about the specifics of working with the English speakers. If developers are English speakers, are the same rules applied? Yes, yes. You can apply the same rules to all, not only clients, but to developers as well. If developers talk about bugs, they sound very rude. They don't have this please and could you, this and send now logs. My developer, my friend, he's a developer, and he makes an order in the Netherlands. We want freeze. He's English speaking. Yeah, he doesn't know English well. Well, he's not rude, but he is not able to build up these structures, and he sounds very rude even for the waiter. Uh, well, as far as imperatives are concerned, I don't use imperatives even in Russian, and I think nobody uses imperatives. Send me requirements, please. This is imperative, but with a please. So, I mean, it means that you are more of the European mindset if you stop using these imperatives. Thank you for the presentation. As a follow up, I understand that there is a difference in psychology. Don't use negative structures, be polite. Could you speak about that? What do you mean specifically? Difference between Russian and foreign clients, it is reflected in the language as well, because there are psychological differences. When the foreigner is, arguing or quarreling, it would be very mild and, in a cultural way. Tries to do it very culturally, not going personal, making it all nice and smooth, not to discomfort the counterparty. So this communication in English is like putting off hats uh, before each other and being very polite. I think this is the main difference. Speaking about American clients, uh, it's easier with them. They much quicker go into jokes, etc. But of course, observing a certain level of culture and politeness. Speaking about clients from where? Because English speaking clients, it's too vague. Yeah, they are all different. I mainly worked with clients from the United States and clients from French and Canada, French speaking clients. Could you say a few words about the feedback of these clients and what's the difference with our feedback, including negative feedback? Well, it depends on the client individually. If the client provides feedback to us, so recently the client described in detail what he liked and disliked. It was very to the point, very practical, but still very polite. Of course, they criticize, but if they criticize, this criticism is to the point. And if they criticize, it means that they want to get a discount or some additional service free of charge. And you need to be careful with that as well. We have a special department, and they are quite professional, and they process negative feedbacks, turning it into positive in order to sell. When do you feel this boundary that this is too bad and you need to redo everything, or it's still not too bad? Well, I think it's easy to understand. Caps lock. So they might be a bit rude. No, it's rare. No caps locks. But it's clear. If formally they said that we changed our mind and want to close the project, and the project manager has this red flag, it becomes clear. Thank you for your presentation. English native speakers, they prepare long read documents. Japanese, if you don't provide any visuals, they will not read these long files and long texts. So, is it good to add pictures, diagrams into the project documentation? Will it help? And what is the attitude of Europeans or Americans to visualization? Well, it's important for them as well. It should be clear, it should be transparent, and we should not forget that very often we deal with clients from India and people of different mentality or different technical preparedness. So the more detailed you are, adding screenshots and diagrams, the better it is. It's better to say more than less. Thank you. So choose the best or the most interesting question and give a voucher to the person. Let it be the lady. Don't forget to put your sticker smiles if you like the presentation. Thank you.